Hey everyone, this is Bill Krieger from the Veterans Archives podcast, where we preserve and share the incredible stories of our nation's heroes. Catch us every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern on Wreaths Across America Radio, or stream anytime on Buzzsprout, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Really, anywhere you choose to get your podcast, you should be able to find us. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us on social media to help us reach more veterans and supporters. We are a nonprofit, and this service is completely free for veterans. Every story matters, and every voice deserves to be heard. Spread the word, honor our heroes, and join us on this mission. Follow, share, and tune in, because their story should never be forgotten. Learn more at veteransarchives.org. We'll see you there. Today is Tuesday, May 13th. We're talking with Shirley Adams, who served in the United States Army. So good morning, Shirley.
Good morning.
Great to see you.
Good to see you.
And, after talking with you on the phone and realizing that you knew my son, this is kind of an honor for me. So I'm very excited.
Well, you should be. You have a great son.
Thank you.
He is absolutely adorable.
Thank you. I like him too.
Yeah.
He's a good kid, but not just because I'm his dad.
Yeah.
So we'll start out really simple this morning. When and where were you born?
I was born in Detroit, Michigan on March 17th, 1965.
Okay. All right. Just a month before me, actually. I was born April 7th, 1965.
Okay.
Not in Detroit, though, in Lansing.
In Lansing. Okay,
Yes.
yeah.
So did you grow up in Detroit?
Till I was 7. My parents moved down here. We lived in Detroit, and there was a lot of turbulence going on in Detroit during those years, and my grandfather lived here in Orlando. And so he, said, hey, come down to Orlando. I'll get you a job where I work. And we moved here in 1972.
Oh, okay. So any brothers or sisters?
I have a sister who is 11 months younger than me.
Oh, okay. So you're the older sister.
I am.
Do you act like an older sister? Just curious.
Always.
All right.
Yes.
I would expect nothing less.
Yeah.
My wife is an older sister. And I have an older sister, and they're very similar in those respects.
Yeah, the oldest sister, they're expected. A lot more is expected of them.
Yep. So do you have many memories of Detroit when you were growing up?
Yes, like good memories of going to my grandparents' house, and I think probably, I remember trick-or-treating as a kid, and it was always very cold, unlike here, where it can be pretty warm.
Yeah.
So stuff like that. And then we would go back and visit, of course, family.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. And what about your parents? So tell me a little bit about them. What did your dad do and what did your mom do?
My mom was born in Detroit, and she ended up retiring. She was a nurse, as a retired nurse. And then my dad, he had to quit school really young to take care of his mom, but his dad lived here, and so we ended up moving here, when I was 7, and so he ended up going to work for Correct Craft, which is a boat manufacturing company, and then, because his dad worked there, and then ultimately, in the end, I ended up working there as well for 27 years.
So kind of a family thing. It
was a family thing, yep.
Yeah.
And my son ended up working there for a little bit too, so.
Well, it's kind of good that he was able to, because I know things were getting pretty bad in Detroit at that time. Yeah. It's kind of nice that he was able to come down here and find work and be able to raise a family.
Jobs were hard during that time, and so, trying to find a good job, and he did. And he stayed until he retired.
Okay. So tell me about growing up in Florida in the 70s. I remember growing up in Michigan in the 70s, and I think it was probably completely different.
Well, it was, yes. Disney was still new. Disney had just opened right before we came here. And it wasn't nearly as crowded, of course, as it is now.
Right.
And there were tons of orange groves everywhere. So we used to play in the orange groves right near here. And I actually grew up in a house not too far from here, and we would go play hide and go seek in the orange groves, and so it was a little bit different. You came in when the lights, when my dad would say, come in when the street lights come on, you better be in the house.
Right.
And other than that, it was, riding your bicycles every day and swimming every day, and during the summer we were in the pool all the time. So
lots of friends.
Lots of sun. Yep, lots of friends.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. It was great. It was a good life.
Well, good. How was school?
School for me was, I was okay, just average. I did ROTC when I was in high school because I always wanted to join the Navy because there was a Navy base, a recruiting base here. And I would remember driving past, they had like a big replica of a warship there, and where they were training the soldiers, and you could go drive past there and see the soldiers. They were in basic training, and they were marching and stuff. And I'm like, I want to do that one day. And so got into high school, and my high school had Navy ROTC, and loved it. I loved it.
Oh, well, so was there military in your family, or was this? Wow.
No, I'm the first one.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know why.
Yeah. You didn't end up joining the Navy, though.
I didn't join the Navy. Got to senior year of high school and time to make that commitment. And coming out, the Navy had a 1-year waiting period for women going in.
Oh.
And when you're 18, a year sounds like a long time. And I was, my best friend was also in ROTC with me, and her dad was retired Air Force. And we decided, for whatever reason, we were going to join the Army. And so, because the Army was taking girls right away.
Yeah.
And so we joined the Army.
On the buddy program.
On the buddy program.
Wow.
Which only guarantees to keep you together through AIT.
Okay. All right. They're pretty good with that guarantee.
Yeah. We were in basic training together. We went into basic training together, and it like any friendship, there's always seems to be like one person who's stronger over the other, has a stronger personality, and my friend had a really strong personality. Mm-hmm. I am the laid-back, easygoing person, and so I just wanted to make it through basic training, without being seen. So, I was just hoping I could go in there, because being yelled at is not high on my list of things that I enjoy. And so when they asked, right in through basic training, they asked who can march, who knows how to march, who was in band or who was in ROTC. I did not raise my hand. And I was pretty tall already, so I was already in the back row.
Right.
For girls at that time. And I didn't raise my hand, but my friend Charlotte, boy, her hand went straight up, and she was all about being in charge and whatnot. And so they were picking, platoon leaders and squad leaders and all that stuff. So they're doing squad leaders, I think, first. And she became a squad leader, and I'm just fine standing in the back. And one day we're in line, we're in formation, and the drill sergeant comes right up behind me. And my maiden name is Oakley. And he's like, Oakley, be in my office at, whatever time. I thought I was going to die. And I'm like, what is going on? So I show up in the office, and he and the other drill sergeant were there. We had 2 drill sergeants. And he's like, we noticed you know how to march. I'm like, oh, dang.
So much for under the radar, huh?
So much for under the radar. And so they said, well, we're going to make you the platoon leader. And I'm like, oh, no, this is not what I wanted at all.
Right, and it wasn't an option, right, Shirley?
Wasn't an option. And so I ended up staying the platoon leader the entire time, which was fine. I think that wasn't the first time that had happened, where I had been put in like a leadership position just out of the blue. It actually happened in high school too, because when I was in ROTC, one summer they actually took us out, and we did a week's worth of basic training in the Navy ROTC. And the same thing happened there, sort of. They made me the leader of that group, even though I didn't want it. And so yeah, that sort of did it.
So it sounds like people see in you this leadership quality that's just there.
I don't know. I don't think to be quiet.
Yeah.
Get through.
Well, some of the best leaders are chosen, not the people that raise their hands and try and be leaders, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, basic training put a little bit of a strain on our friendship, on Charlotte's friendship. And because she wanted to be the leader and I didn't. And so then I ended up being the leader over her. And I mean, it was fine, but as I started, I was like, wow, you can be really irritating. And so we're still friends now. I just can only take her in small doses.
Well, and I think you see it from a different perspective, right? When you're a leader and you're ultimately responsible, you start to kind of see the things that people do that maybe you didn't see when you were flying under the radar.
That is true. Yeah, very true.
So basic training was what? Was it 12 weeks?
It was 8 weeks.
8 weeks. Okay.
Yeah, because that was the 80s.
Yeah.
So I went in and we left for basic training the day after Thanksgiving, 1983.
Interesting. I think the military does that. I went to basic training the day after Christmas in 1984. Really? Oh. I took a gap year before I did anything, but...
I think the horrible thing, though, was because it was Christmas, they sent us home from basic training for a week.
How hard was that?
Horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, not coming home. Coming home was great.
You knew you had to go back, though.
But going back was traumatic.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's horrible.
I can only. It's like going to basic training all over again. Kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you.
I think they did extend us out maybe a couple of weeks because of that. But
okay. Did you go to Fort Jackson?
I did.
Okay.
Relaxing in Jackson.
That's where all the women went in the 80s, I think.
I believe so.
Yeah.
There were a lot of us.
Yeah, because I think they were like the military was really just kind of starting to integrate males and females at the time.
Right.
Yeah. So
we would have the only time that we saw the males was potentially near chow time because they were having chow at the same time. But other than that, they kept us pretty well separated.
Yeah. Probably not a bad idea.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah.
Yeah. So you get through basic training.
I did get through basic training.
And you were there kind of at a good time of year, right? It wasn't ridiculously hot and sweaty.
Pretty cold.
Yeah.
And it was really cold. And they would have like heating tents where they'd have to take us in there just to warm us up. But,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else stand out in basic training or any other?
I had to go to like little extra boot camp because I wasn't really great at push-ups. And so after the day was over, you'd have to go do weight training. And those of us that got selected out, but just had to make it through the minimum for push-ups. But other than that, it was fine. I didn't really, I learned a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so did you come home between basic and AIT or just go right to AIT?
No, went straight to AIT. My mom and my stepdad and my sister came up for graduation. I think we got an afternoon with them after graduation, and I don't think we had the next day. I think it was really just that one day.
Yeah.
And then right on into AIT. But going back to MEPS, when you're choosing what you're going to be, the recruiters were trying to get me to become an MP because of my height. But my friend Charlotte was short and needed to lose weight before we could even get to basic training. And so we had thought, I don't know who thought it up, maybe her because she was stronger personality. I thought one day I wanted to own my own restaurant. I'm trying to think farther out ahead. Right. What can I get out of this? And I was like, owning my own restaurant would be something really cool. And so we ended up becoming Army cooks. Now, Charlotte's dad was furious because he was an officer in the Air Force.
Oh, yeah.
And but Charlotte had fewer options than I did. And so so I'm like, okay, well, we'll do this. I'm thinking, all right, how hard is it to be a cook? It cannot be that hard. Oh,
it's ridiculously hard.
It is ridiculously hard. There's a lot to learn. But the thing is you're on. Everybody's got to eat 3 times a day. And guess when the cooks start in the morning? They start at 2.
Yeah.
And they do not finish until they're done cleaning after dinner. And so if you're lucky enough to be in a unit that has enough cooks to have 2 shifts, good to go. But if you're not, it is tiring.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And doggone it, they got to eat 7 days a week.
That's right. Yeah, that doesn't stop.
Yeah, it doesn't stop. So it was exhausting.
Yeah. And so how is AIT for cooks then? I mean, because I went
a lot of math, actually.
Yeah.
It's a lot of math because you're trying to learn how to use this industrial equipment without chopping off all your fingers. But it's taking these recipes and either multiplying them or contracting them, with math, of course.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was fine. And just, learning regulations, a lot into it to make sure you're not giving somebody food poisoning.
Right. Well, and
more difficult than I anticipated.
And I think it's funny because I remember math in high school thinking I'll never use this. And
Me too.
I'm not an Army cook, but I do a lot of cooking, and I find myself using algebra all the time.
Right.
To solve for either upscaling or downscaling a recipe.
My biggest problem in downscaling after I got out of the military was mashed potatoes. We had lots of mashed potatoes.
Right.
Scale that down now.
Yeah. You don't need mashed potatoes for 100 people.
Exactly.
That's funny.
I mean, I can whip up a meal for a bunch of people.
That's funny because I remember when I first got married a long time ago. I was used to cooking for like a family, and it was just her and I, and we had moved to Virginia Beach. So I'm cooking like nachos for 8-10 people, and it's just the two of us. I think we both gained a few pounds because of that. But
and when you will gain a few pounds while you're doing that because you've got to taste test everything,
right?
And then when I was in my regular unit, we would eat like before and after, so you have to be careful you don't eat twice.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. 2 dinners, 2 breakfasts,
exactly.
Whatever it is. So so how long was your AIT?
AIT was also 8 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what happens from there?
So what happens from there, we're in a formation and they're just naming out where you're going, where you're being stationed, because you have no idea where you're going to go. And Charlotte and I both got sent to Germany. We were going to Germany. So then you get to come home. They sent us home for a week in between AIT and then being sent over to Germany. And so then went into Ramstein and then into Frankfurt and then got sent to our base, which was in Gelnhausen. Charlotte ended up staying in Frankfurt, and then I went to a tiny little base in Gelnhausen, Germany.
Right, that didn't have enough cooks for 2 shifts.
Yeah, sometimes we did. Sometimes we would join together with other units so that we could make it, because you can't do that for very long without having a break.
Right, yeah. I can only imagine.
Or we would take turns, for the weekends for the different units, because I was in a HHC unit.
Okay. And how was Germany?
Gorgeous. Beautiful. Cold. But absolutely beautiful. The base that I was at used to be a World War II German base. And so it was gorgeous. And the barracks were like block. I mean, it was just very idyllic. It had cobblestone streets still. In the middle of it, it had this beautiful like pond that used to be a swimming pool for officers. So it was really very different. And the countryside was just really hilly, just gorgeous, beautiful.
Yeah. So did you have off time to enjoy all of that?
Yeah, I did have off time. In fact, that's how I met my first husband. He was also in the military. We were in the same unit, and he was a mechanic. And so, yeah, you would get to go on your off time, and of course weekends, you would get to go. I would go to Frankfurt to visit Charlotte, and a couple of my other friends were nearby that went to basic training. But then you got to go into the countryside. It was really very pretty.
Oh, I've never been in Germany. I've talked to a lot of people who have.
I want to go back.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Got to go on the Rhine River, and my first husband, Steven, he had his car was shipped over to him, so we went on the Autobahn, and which was scary. And
don't like driving fast.
no, got to go to a couple of castles, and yeah, very pretty.
Yeah. Is there anything about Germany that really stands out to you? Like if you think about back to that, what's like one thing that's just really sticks in your head?
So Stephen and I actually ended up, we got married, but we lived off post. And I think what stands out to me most is just the little town of Gelnhausen. They would roll up the streets practically at 12 o'clock on Saturdays. And then there was nothing happening all through Sunday. So it was just very more laid back. I think the other thing that stands out to me about Germany was the people in southern Germany were much more welcoming of Americans than the people in northern Germany were.
Oh. Wow. Do you think that's because in northern Germany that was more of a fighting thing, and in southern Germany it was more of a liberation thing?
It could be. Yeah, it definitely could be. Because it was only the 80s, so now you're only talking about 35, 40 years since the end of the war. Still not enough time, I don't think, had passed.
Which is interesting, because you talk about World War II now, it seems so far away.
So far away.
But when we were growing up,
right.
Vietnam was kind of still going on.
Right.
Right? And it had maybe just ended, but World War II was still something. There was lots of movies made about it. Right. People still talked about it.
Yeah. I mean, when you went to Frankfurt, you could see in the buildings themselves in downtown Frankfurt where they had literally built on top of the ruins. And so you would have like this much where you could see the original foundation of the building, and then where they just built up. And it's just was pretty amazing.
Yeah. You probably wouldn't even see that today.
No, you wouldn't even notice it today.
It's all gone.
But they would tell you about it then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how long were you in Germany?
I guess it would have been about a year and a half, a little over a year and a half, about a year and a half.
Okay. And then, so did you rotate back stateside, or did you get out of the Army? How long?
So when Stephen and I got married, I was pregnant. And at that time, and because we were in a tiny village, we did have a medical unit there, but nothing that was spectacular.
Right.
You'd have to go back to Frankfurt to get like a real doctor. And, the first question they ask you is, are you going to have an abortion? That was the very first question in 1984 and late 1984. And, I said, no. And so then I only had a few options back then. They were not, as you were talking about, women were still just really being integrated into the military. Right. There was they didn't have a plan.
No, basically it's a great way to get kicked out.
Yeah. So you didn't get kicked out. You had a couple of options. One, you could have an abortion.
Right.
Number two, if you, because I was in an HAC unit, we would go to the field all the time at the drop of a pin to do our planned war games. And you had to be ready to go in 15 minutes. Right. Well, if you've got a child, you better have a good support system. I didn't have that support system over there. And most wives of other military men thought you were trying to steal their husband. And so they were none too friendly towards you. Right. None too friendly. The third option was send your child home, let somebody else raise your child. Well, my parents were working, and that's not what I was going to do. Or you could take an honorable discharge. That was my only option. So I took an honorable discharge and stayed, I think, all the way until, they didn't discharge me until I was like 7 months pregnant. But because I didn't have an OB, I did not have regular medical care, I ended up getting like really sick. I had a really bad kidney infection when I was being discharged. Oh. And that was horrible. So I remember flying home. I was really sick, and my kidney was so swollen, it was like half sticking out my back.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So then they flew me home, flew back to Fort Jackson to get out processed. Still didn't see a doctor. And then they flew me home. And that night I'm like, you've got to take me to the hospital. And so because the military was still actually in charge of my care.
Yeah.
We went to the Navy base, the Navy hospital here in Orlando. And of course, I think I spent a week in the hospital. And yeah. And then ultimately she ended up being born there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So your daughter's your oldest?
My daughter is my oldest.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so the military paid for the birth, and I think I had to pay for the diapers, which was like maybe $3 at the time. So she was pretty cheap. Yeah. She was a bargain.
Yeah, not a bad deal. So she was born in 85?
She was born in July of 85.
Okay.
Yeah. So I missed like this window of being able to have military benefits because I wasn't in I missed the full 2 years.
Yeah.
By a few months. Yeah.
Yeah. It's too bad they can't change some of that.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, it's all in the past,
Yeah.
right?
It's all in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you get out now. Did your husband come?
So it turns out the timing was really incredible. He was finishing up 8 years.
Uh-huh.
So he finished up his 8 years, like literally right at the end of the pregnancy. And so he actually made it home right before the baby was born.
Oh, well, that's kind of nice.
The timing I don't even know how you plan that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Divine intervention.
Divine intervention, which I truly believe in.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, it happens.
It happens.
So your daughter's born, your husband's back.
Yep.
What's the next phase?
So the next phase is we were moved in with my dad for a little bit as we tried to transition as he was transitioning out of the military, and then Jennifer was born. So it was boom, 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 all happening at the same time.
Uh-huh.
And then he is from Massachusetts. And he had worked for Marshall's department store prior to going into the military.
Okay.
And so when he got out of the military, Marshall's hired him back as a store manager. And so, but then they transferred us to Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. And so when the baby was pretty little, we ended up moving to Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay.
And lived there for a couple of years.
Uh-huh. And then you had another baby in there
Then I
somewhere?
had another baby. Yep. 14 months later, along comes my son, Eric, and I was still pretty young because I was 20 when I had Jennifer.
Yeah.
And then 21 when I had Eric. And then I remember my mom coming up to Jacksonville. They had taken Jennifer for a week so that I could have some bonding time with the new baby. And then when they brought her back and they left, I think I cried. Because I'm like, what am I going to do if they both cry at the same time?
Right.
Oh, frightening. I was only 21.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of people don't necessarily get that about folks who join the military, right? Mm-hmm. If you join right out of high school, kind of like you and I did.
I was 18.
Yeah. You do a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
On an accelerated calendar.
Yes.
Right? And by the time you're 25, like you've had this whole life experience.
Right.
That people who are your age don't get.
Right.
Right? Like, how are you having kids at 20 and 21 and being married and doing all the, I mean, you're an adult, but you're still a kid.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now I look at them, I'm like, wow, you're just a baby.
Yeah.
I was fully on an adult making big decisions and,
right.
all the things. Yeah.
Yeah. So you, now you have 2 kids. Yeah. So were they, as they got older though, were they close enough in age that they, like my sister and I think we're 18 months apart, and we were friends like when we were little. Mm-hmm. So once we got past that screaming crying stage, we were able to entertain each other. Was that kind of the same for you or not?
Not really, because they're so polar opposites in many things. So My daughter Jennifer is she knew what she wanted to be from a very young age. She wanted to be a teacher and, just really book smart and reading all the time and all that stuff. And my son, God bless him, it's a miracle he graduated from high school, but he was full-on boy, wanted to be outside in sports and breaking parts of his body, and rough and tumble.
Right.
And so they were really totally opposite. Now they got along, but they were not close friends. They were not friends.
Okay.
Yeah. They ran in two totally different circles.
Yeah. I can understand that. So you're married, your husband's working, you're raising kids?
So my first husband and I, after we got to Jacksonville, we stayed there for a while. Eric came along, and then Stephen got transferred back to Orlando and was working for them in Orlando. But he had a lot of issues there. Alcoholism is pretty prevalent in the military.
Yes. And
I did not see that while we were in the military, but after we were out, it becomes a monster. And it's not the way, I just was not going to have my children raised that way.
Right.
And so, he didn't want to get help. And so we ultimately ended up, divorcing. And we're great friends now. In fact, he literally, last week, he sent me these YouTube videos that he found of Gelnhausen as it stands today, because it closed, that base closed and was absorbed back by the town. And they turned it into office buildings and stuff like that. But you could still, somebody had gone through and taken a tour, and I was like, wow, it doesn't look the same, but there were things that I recognized from almost 40 years ago now.
That's kind of cool when you can see that happen.
Yeah.
Well, it's good that you're able to be friends.
Oh, yeah. We couldn't be married, and he ultimately did end up getting help for his alcoholism. He ended up moving back to Massachusetts, and now he's a big AA proponent, and he hasn't had alcohol in a long decades now. But yeah,
that will definitely change a person.
It will.
So when you got divorced, then did you go back to work?
Yeah. So I was working while we were married. I was. When we lived in Jacksonville, I worked at night and at McDonald's at the mall, which was across the street. And then McDonald's wanted to put me through their management training program.
Because you're a leader.
Yeah. And because we moved back here to Orlando, they were like, hey, we have a management training program. But I ultimately ended up not doing that. When Steve and I broke up, my dad got me a job at Correctcraft because I needed a job. And he's like, come work for us. And I was like, all right. I wanted to become a police officer, believe it or not. And so my mom was furious that I was going to work at Correctcraft. She's like, you can only work there a year. You're not going to work in a factory your whole life. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And I had applied to the city of Orlando, their police department. And it's a process. If you want to, there's all these check steps along the way, and you can be kicked out of the process at any point.
Right.
So I made it all the way through, and the last is a psychological evaluation, and then you're cleared to go on. I did get cleared to go on, but they had no white female spots. No white female positions. And they're like, go apply for the county and they'll hire you right away. But I was already, was seriously dating my current husband, Bill, at the time. And he's like, I can't be married to a police officer. That just, no way, that can't happen. So then I did stay with Correctcraft and ended up, I never went to college, but I did seek a transfer because I was just doing regular production line work.
Yeah.
And they had an opening in purchasing. And this is just now when computers are starting to get big.
Right.
And
this is like when they still had the big green screens, right?
Yeah, it was still DOS.
Yeah.
The DOS program.
Oh, yes.
And the monitors were like, yeah, they were huge.
There's a whole segment of society that's listening to this right now that has no idea what we're talking about.
No clue.
Because it's all on your phone now.
Right.
Anyway.
And I took typing in high school, so
Yeah.
I figured, I could do that. And I remember somebody asking me, well, it involves a lot of computer work. And I'm like, well, I can type and I will learn the computer, which I did.
Yeah.
And back then, of course, they weren't teaching, we didn't get computer classes in high school.
No.
We got shorthand and typing.
Yeah.
And I went to the schools. They had the classes that you could take for a week. You went and learned Word, and then you went and learned Excel and PowerPoint. And, those were great classes for getting you the basics and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in purchasing for a year and a half. Really loved it. Loved it. Love I am a huge proponent of manufacturing. I love manufacturing. And then they came and tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, we have this job in personnel. And CorrectCraft is they were founded in 1925, family-owned company. And so I said, now I had a decision to make at that time, and they gave me the weekend to think about it. I knew nothing about HR, and the lady came over from HR, and she's like, you need to take this job. You'll know everything about everybody. And I'm like, that was like a nightmare. I don't want to know anything about anybody. I just want to do my thing.
I want to purchase stuff.
Yeah, I want to purchase stuff. And so I had a really good mentor. He was the vice president of production, and I went and talked to him, and I said, well, I see my path going this way. He's like, you don't know that your path will end up that way, but if you don't take this now, you'll never know. And so I was like, ooh, he was right. So I took the job. I just said, please just make sure that I get the right training, because that job did payroll every week. Mm-hmm. And for me, that was like a huge responsibility. Well, it is a big responsibility. Now I can do it in my sleep, but I think of the first 90 days, that's probably what kept me up most at night, making sure that, because I knew everybody, most people live paycheck to paycheck.
Oh, yeah.
And so for me, that was a big deal. I didn't want anybody to miss out on that. So they did. They sent me to school. I started taking classes at Rollins, learning how to do things, payroll courses and HR courses. And then along the way, the company itself started to change. They were in their third generation.
Right.
And somebody along the way said, if you want to keep your job, you're going to have to go to college. And I was like, oh my gosh. By now, my son's 18. He had just graduated from high school. And I was 39, and I went to Valencia College here in Orlando. And my first night of class, I'm like thinking I'm really old at 39.
Yeah, super old.
Super old. I'm like, I'm going to be the oldest person in class, and I'm just starting at the beginning. And I had to take these like remedial math classes before I could even take math. Mm-hmm. And the first night in class, there's one of my son's friends, high school friends, is in the class with me. And I'm like, well, this is not intimidating at all.
Right.
And so I'm texting Eric, and I'm like, so-and-so's in class with me. And he's getting a text from his friend, dude, your mom's in class with me. I was like, But I made it. It took me 6 years to get my undergrad degree. Uh-huh. And by that time, they were now requiring master's degrees. So they, if you wanted to stay, I was already in a senior leadership position. And so I had the job long before I had the title.
Right.
I was doing it. And so they paid for my master's degree as well. And so my best friend, she was the executive vice president. We went and did our master's degrees at the same time. It was great. It was at UCF.
So you got to do the buddy program at UCF then?
Did the buddy program at UCF. I was going to get a master's in psychology because psychology and HR sort of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
But my boss, Bill Yergin, he is the president still of CorrectCraft. He's like, you'd be way more valuable if you had an MBA. And so I'm like, well, you're paying for it, so I'll get the MBA, whatever you want. And I did, and it was an amazing experience. It was.
So how old were you when you got your master's degree then?
Let's take a quick break.
Hey, listeners, we need your help to keep the Veterans Archives podcast going. We're a nonprofit dedicated to preserving the stories of our nation's heroes, and we provide this service completely free to veterans. Your support helps us record, share, and archive these incredible stories so future generations never forget the sacrifices made for our freedom. Every donation, big or small, makes a difference. Visit veteransarchives.org to contribute today. Help us honor their service by ensuring their voices are heard. And thank you for your support, and thank you to all the veterans who have served our country.
So, I just turned 60 this year,
Yeah.
so I think I was like maybe 47.
Okay. All right, very similar. I got my undergrad only because I was going to OCS and had to have a degree to get my commission. But then I had a bunch of VA money left over, so I got my master's. But I got it when I finally got it when I was 50.
Really?
So, and that's the other thing too. A lot of people that I talk to from the military go to college later on in life. And colleges don't forget, because I went to community college right out of high school and totally bombed. Like every single class bombed, every single. So probably 30 years later, I want to go back and get my degree. So I go back to community college. They put me on academic probation based on my grades from 30 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
So I had to pay for, the VA wouldn't pay for my college until I got off academic probation. So I had to do everything on my own for like that first, semester. Yeah. But they don't forget.
They don't forget. Well, I ended up getting straight A's all the way through college. And especially towards the end, I was doing accelerated classes through in Palm Beach Atlantic. So the classes flipped over every 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And that last year, I took a ton because I just powered through it I was going to school like every night. I'm like, I'll see you guys when I'm done, you know, and my family, and Thankfully, my husband was very supportive, and so I had a good support system underneath. So my daughter and I think graduated near the same time.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Masters. Yeah.
Did you walk for your degrees? Okay, I was curious.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I'm walking. I got this. I'm walking.
Because I walked for my associate's degree, but I didn't walk for my undergrad or my graduate degree. I was like, I'm just done.
Well, the graduate degree, it was a cohort, and we all got pretty tight and pretty close. In fact, we're still friends now, and so we all walked together. And it was UCF, so it was like massive graduation. Right.
Yeah, you kind of have to go do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's something interesting I'm kind of learning about you, is that your friendships sort of stay. Like, you went in on the buddy program, and you're still friends with that person. You're still friends with your ex-husband. You're friends with the people you went to college with.
Yeah, my very best friend is, we met in the 6th grade. And she actually married a Navy guy, and they spent 30 years in the Navy. And she moved back here probably, I guess it's been about maybe 8-9 years ago, because her daughter lives here, and she was becoming a grandma as well. And we're just best friends. 30 years, we just went right back to being best friends.
Yeah. That grandparent thing sort of sneaks up on you, doesn't it?
Well, it's the best thing ever.
Oh, I love it. But
I retired at 50 from Caretcraft because I had told my daughter and son-in-law, like, if you guys ever, want to have a child, I'll take care of the baby. And so I had, gotten to a point where I could retire, so to speak. And they were pregnant with my first grandchild, Ronan. And so I did. And that's when I started teaching at Rollins then. I'm an adjunct professor.
Oh, okay. So like a lot of people, you don't really retire.
No,
right? You just find...
I came out of retirement twice,
Yeah, you kind of find things that you want to do instead of things that you have to do. I think that's how I look at it.
Well, you do things, yes. So when you're younger, you take the job because you've got to put food on the table.
Right.
And then when you get older, you take the jobs that you like because it intrigues you.
Yeah.
Not so much for the money.
Exactly. So I want to back up just a little bit, though. Tell me about your husband, Bill, and how you met.
Yep. So we met, he was actually some of my friends at Caretcraft. He was renting a room from him, so that's how we met. And then we started dating. And he sort of like had nowhere to go for Thanksgiving that year. And so I am the collector of lost souls is how I describe it. But if you don't have anywhere to go for the holidays, you're coming to my house.
Okay.
And yeah, so we ended up getting married, dated for a little over a year, and then ended up getting married. Jennifer and Eric were young. Mm-hmm. He was working for the Division of Forestry, and he was a dispatcher for forestry at the time. And then, yeah, we lived there at forestry, on the forestry property for, I think, 5 years, which was different.
Yeah.
And they didn't charge us anything for like the first couple of years. And then they're like, oh yeah, well, we're probably the state. We probably should charge you. Because they had little houses on the property, on forestry property.
Uh-huh.
And they're like, oh, we probably should charge you something. So they charged us $25 a month.
Wow.
Whoopee. But that experience ended up giving us the money to buy our first house, you know, for the down payment. And I think we used we didn't use the VA benefit then. They had like a first time home buyers thing. So we had to stay in that house for 7 years, and then we ended up moving to this house.
Okay. And you've been married for how long then?
35 years.
Wow.
This year will be 36.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
That's nice.
It's been quite the challenge.
Yeah. Well, I think, that's a great message for people though. Like, marriage is great, but it's work.
It is work. And my husband has Alzheimer's. So that's a challenge in and of itself, just navigating that.
Yes. I went through that with my grandfather and then with my stepfather. So it's difficult.
It is difficult. Yeah, I went through it with my dad as well. And he died last year.
Okay.
He passed on last year.
Yeah, my stepfather passed away a few years ago.
Yeah.
And my grandmother too. We had, a lot of times we just had to find humor in it.
Oh, yeah.
You
have to find the humor in it.
I remember when my parents still lived near where I lived. They've moved since, but my grandmother had Alzheimer's, and we went to brunch. We used to go to this fancy restaurant for brunch, and we were all there, all the kids, my parents, and my grandmother. And it's one of those restaurants where they take your coat when you come in.
Oh, yeah.
So they took my grandma's coat, and halfway to the table, she's like, "Where'd my coat go?" Right? And she's asking about this coat for like 20 minutes. So finally her mind goes to something else.
Yeah.
And we're all sitting around the table looking at the menus, and I looked over and I said, "Grandma, where's your coat at?"
Oh my God.
I thought my mom was going to kill me.
That is something my son would do.
But we still share that story.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's sad and it's difficult, but you can choose to be sad about it, or you can find something to help you through it.
Right.
Is that, you find yourself in that situation?
Yeah, and I have a really good support system.
Yeah.
I've got my mom lives with me, but that's another story. But my kids, they're great. My sister is really great. So we have a good support system.
That's good. And your kids got along with Bill?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they're during the teenage years was a little turbulent, but what teenage years are not turbulent?
Right.
And but we survived. Everybody survived into adulthood.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. So your daughter is currently teaching?
Yeah, she's an elementary school teacher. That's what she wanted to be her whole life. And when she graduated college in 3 years, not 4, and went straight into teaching. So she was 21 and teaching kindergarten. And I was very proud. So she's a gifted teacher now. And I think she's probably 18 years in now of teaching. Yeah. She's got 3 kids of her own, married, and both my kids live within 2 miles. So
that's got to be
close.
great as a grandmother.
It is. Yeah.
I'm curious though. So like, when the grandkids come over and when they leave, do you find yourself sleeping for like 2 days after they're gone? Because my granddaughter wears me out.
So, we had Ronan full time.
Okay.
And so that's the reason why I retired at 50 was to take care of him. So I'd pick him up in the mornings from their house, bring him back here, but I had to learn how to be a mom all over again. I forgot how hard it was to be a mom and how exhausting it was. And so, but we did it, and it was like the best thing ever. And then Scarlett came along. Those two are 18 months apart, exactly 18 months apart. And I was like, wow, it was easy with one. And so now I've got two. And so, so my daughter, I'd go pick the kids up, but she'd come home, and especially with Ronan, I'd give her child and her dinner because we would coordinate. I'd do the cooking because she can't cook. And so it worked. So now I'm sort of in the groove. It doesn't bother me. Now there's three of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and you're young. Big picture.
Yeah, big picture.
Right. Mm-hmm. I like to think 60's young. Mm-hmm. But my kids don't think so.
I know. I think 60's young.
Yeah.
My body's telling me otherwise in some aspects, but
right.
Yeah.
We don't bounce like we used to.
No, it's harder to get up off the floor.
Yes, it definitely is. So you're an adjunct professor as well.
I am. And I, 2 years ago, a friend of mine that I went to high school with and church with, he had asked me to go out for coffee. And so we met. He needed an HR director, and he told me, he's like, oh yeah, I'm working for First Presbyterian Church now. And he's like, we need an HR director because ours is retiring. I'm like, you work for a church that needs an HR director? How many people do you have working there? It's typically.
It's a big church.
It is a big church. They have 100.
Wow.
But they have a school that's attached to it, which is why they have 100. And so he's telling me, the type of person, and, now the kids are in school, adjuncting, I was doing some consulting, and I'm like, well, what if I applied? And so, because I've always been a faith person and working at Correct Rafted, they're a faith-based company as well. And I applied, interviewed, got the job, and it's probably it doesn't pay as much as some of my other job, but it's the best job I've ever had.
Yeah.
One of the best jobs. Correct Raft was really good too.
Yeah, it sounds like you just had a series of good experiences.
Yeah.
Probably a few bumps along the way, but a series of good
bumps along. Yeah, there was one I worked at for a year, and I was like, oh, this is not for me. They were actually paying me a lot of money, but I was like, not for me.
Have you discovered that money's great, but your sanity's a little bit more important?
Sanity and time.
Yeah.
My time, when the kids were growing up, I have a lot of regrets about, I had to work, so I missed that field trip or whatever. Now I tell people that I teach and that have worked for me, never miss a field trip. Don't be afraid to come to me and ask for the day off because you got to go do something with your kids.
Yeah.
And so I think they appreciate that.
Well, your experience is going to help them have an even better experience.
Have a better experience, yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, I think something changes in us. Well, again, we had to do this because we had to put food on the table, and now I can kind of choose what I want to do.
Exactly.
And so do you feel like you're positively impacting like that next generation of folks that are going to be working?
I totally feel that way. There's actually the lady that's working for me now. She is going to nursing school at night. Now she's a single mom, so I already feel for her. And she's doing her homework all day. She's a receptionist, so she has a lot that allows her to be able to do that. Whereas some people would probably drive them crazy. But I'm like, if she can do it, it's not hurting anybody, and ultimately in the end, she's bettering herself.
Right.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah. Well, and when you do those sorts of things, you make better employees.
Yeah.
Like an employee that you've taken care of, they're 9 times out of 10 going to remember that, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
people remember how you made them feel.
Yes. Yeah. There's a quote about that somewhere. I think the nation's poet actually wrote something about that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you've done a lot, and you're semi-retired, but not retired. Yeah. You've raised a family, you're taking care of a family, you're taking care of your husband, you had a lot going on. I do want to ask really 2 more questions. The first one is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to share as part of your story?
Part of my story, well, because I was in the right place at the right time, I think. And, Correct Craft gave me so many opportunities I mean, we started doing mission trips around the world, and I've been to a ton of places because of that. And my master's degree got to go to China as part of that program.
Wow.
It was built into the curriculum. Amazing. Just the opportunities that I've had, I am so grateful for. I'm like, I never thought that this would be the life that I would have. I figured I'd just go to work someplace like my dad and stay there until I retired, doing menial nothing. And that's not the way it turned out.
It's amazing how life does that.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question about so you did mission trips.
Yeah.
I know this is not a fair question, but like if you could just pick one of those that was your absolute favorite, tell me about that.
Yeah, it was the very first one, to Mexico.
Okay.
Because that one changed my life. They were all great, and I got to go to Ethiopia and all these different countries, but that one changed my life because I had worked for this faith-based company, and we would have guests come in, and there were Bible studies and whatnot. But our president, Bill Jurgen, he was new to the company, and he had told me, we're going to do mission trips. And I was like, we're going to do what? And he's like, yeah, I want you to find a place where we can go and take employees out of the country. You can't be in the United States. I thought he was crazy. I'm like, how are we going to do this? You do this through church. And I found a company. I didn't know how to do it. So if I don't know how to do something, let's go find somebody who does.
Right.
So I did. I found a company called Missionary Ventures. They specialize in short-term mission trips. And went to Mexico. So they flew me out to California. I went in through Tijuana, Mexico, and met these missionaries. And they're building houses in Mexico. It's a house to them. It's a shed to us.
Right.
It's a house to them. And I said, okay, we're going to do this. So we took 25 people in July to Mexico. It was hot.
Yes.
And we were staying in a campground. We were camping at night. And so there were no facilities. I mean, and the smell was just unbelievable. And that first night, Bill Jurgen asked us, we were praying, and he said, if you want to say the prayer of, salvation, you say the prayer. And I was sitting there prior to this, and the sun was going down, and we're in Mexico. And I had already thought to myself, God, why did you bring me here? I am in this spot, in this place that is pushing me way outside my comfort zone. I mean, my gag reflex was on overdrive most of the time that we were there because of the smells. And I'm like, there's got to be a reason. So there's something bigger going on here. And so I said that prayer that night. And I told him about it the next day because we were on the work site. We were taking a lunch break, and I tried to get up as high as I could away from the breeze. And I told him that I had said the prayer of salvation, and so he prayed with me that night. I could not talk about it for a year after that. Could not. Even now, I will start to cry about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how did that feel for you? Like, was that like a weight lifted, or?
I think it was a wake-up call.
Yeah.
In that now I knew what my purpose was.
Uh-huh.
He had showed me what my gift was. Like, I didn't believe in myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Which amazes me, because even up till that point in your life, if you just look back on all the things that you had accomplished, right? And I think too that many times we look back and talk about what we have accomplished, but really there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that helped you accomplish those things.
Yeah.
People, spiritual, all of those things.
Yeah, all those things. And I look back at it now, and I'm like, it was divine intervention all along the way. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't imagine working for a company that says, we're going to do a mission outside the country. That's just, we build boats, but we're going to do this. Mm-hmm. That's why they're successful.
That's why they're successful. Yeah. And so he, I feel like he had showed me my gift was, yeah, I can go and I can hammer a nail in, but my real gift is in being able to organize, and because there's a lot that goes into it, the transportation, the food, the safety, all of that goes into taking all these people from outside, outside the United States and getting them all back safely.
Yeah. Do you think that when you look back on the leadership positions that you were forced to take, you feel like those are little knocks on the door? Like,
yeah,
hey.
they were.
Yeah.
They were like, Shirley, wake up.
Yeah.
We know you're in there. Because I could have easily, my dad, he was offered positions, but in leadership, and he never would take them. And, he just sort of went along. He was the worker bee. And, but part of it is saying yes when the opportunity comes along.
Right. What's the old joke about the guy in the flood? I don't know if you've heard this. Stop me. There's a flood that hits this guy's town. And, as the waters are rising, a boat comes by and offers him help. And he says, no, the Lord will take care of me. And then the water gets a little higher and another boat comes by and he says, the Lord's going to take care of me. And then and the water gets a little higher, a helicopter comes by and he says, no, the Lord's going to take care of me. And the guy drowns. Yeah. And he gets to heaven and he says, what's the deal? You said you'd take care of me. And the Lord says, I sent you 2 boats and a helicopter. What more did you want?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I have heard that story and I think about it all the time. And I'm like, yeah. He sent me stuff all along the way. So, working for a church now, that is the amazing part.
Yeah. Does it feel kind of full circle for you?
Full circle. Yeah. In fact, they had asked me, because I started out as a department of 1 in HR and I'm ending as a department of 1 in HR. In between, there's been a lot, big teams and stuff like that. Lots of people, 1,000 people. And now I'm back to 100, Department of 1. And the head pastor, David Swanson, had asked me, well, how do you feel about that? I'm like, this is my full circle moment. Mm-hmm. And I love it.
Yeah. So I don't want to think too far in the future, but what do you think's next for you?
Gosh, I don't know. I think, so my son is very entrepreneurial. Mm-hmm. My son-in-law is entrepreneurial. I help them both with their businesses. And I think that there will be a joint venture in the future that I will support them on. I'm not out in the front, and I'm great behind the scenes.
Yeah. I look forward to seeing that next chapter too.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I've asked a lot of questions today, and you've had an amazing life.
Thank you.
I'm a firm believer in that everything we do brings us to the point where we're at, right?
Yeah.
And so really just one last question as we kind of wrap this up, and that is, when someone's watching this 100 years from now, and you and I aren't here anymore, what message do you want to leave for people?
I think the message would be, don't be afraid. You've got to say yes when somebody asks you, don't operate out of fear. If you don't know something, learn it. Be a lifelong learner. I never thought I would go to college, and here I am. I'm teaching college. And it didn't happen until later. So it's never too late. And put yourself outside of your comfort zone. You'll be so richly rewarded.
All right, well,
that's what I want them to know.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking time out on a Tuesday to talk with me.
I appreciate it. Thank you for coming here.
Oh, you're welcome.
I didn't fly here. You did.
That's true.
That's a wrap for this episode of the Veterans Archives podcast. We truly appreciate you taking the time to listen and honor the incredible stories of our nation's heroes. Don't forget, you can catch us every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern on Wreaths Across America Radio, or stream past episodes anytime on Buzzsprout, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and as I've said before, any place you can find a podcast, you can find the Veterans Archives podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share our content on YouTube and Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and across all social media. Every share helps us reach more people and preserve more stories. The Veterans Archives podcast is a nonprofit initiative, and our mission is simple: to give veterans a voice and ensure their stories are never forgotten. This service is completely free for veterans because their sacrifices deserve to be recognized and remembered.
You want to help? Follow us, spread the word, and if you know a veteran with a story to tell, send them our way. Visit us at veteransarchives.org to learn more about how you can get involved. Thanks again for tuning in, and most importantly, thank you to all the veterans and their families for their service and sacrifice. Until next time, take care, and we will see you on the next episode of the Veterans Archives Podcast.